to another extra episode of Arena Talks. For the next 6 weeks, I will make each week an extra episode with the recaps of the first season of Star Trek Strange New World. Spoiler alert! If you don't want to know what is in the episode or about Strange New World, please listen to this episode after you have watched the episode. I will post this episode on Wednesday, just before the next episode will appear on the streaming services. This to avoid spoilers. The Enterprise crew attempt to deliver a nuclear-powered AP-350 air filter to a Federation colony, but find many of the colonists dead. Security Chief La'an Noonien Singh helps evacuate the survivors and recognizes that this is a Gorn trap. She is the only survivor of a Gorn attack in her childhood. A Gorn ship attacks, doing significant damage to Enterprise, with M'Benga and Chapel resorting to 21st century medicines to treat the wounded, including number 1, when their equipment goes offline. They lure the Gorn ship into the atmosphere of a brown dwarf near a black hole, where both ship's sensors and shields are useless. Spock is able to track the Gorn ship and they destroy it. But 3 more Gorn ships arrive. One is crushed by the pressure of the brown dwarf's atmosphere. Spock mind melds with Noonien Singh to learn about the Gorn communication system, and they use this to trick one of the ships to fire on the other. Enterprise then warps around the black hole, temporarily disappearing from view, and ejects the destabilizing AP-350, which explodes and convinces the remaining Gorn ship that Enterprise destroyed it. So, this episode was very interesting, and I really loved it. It's very, and I must say, the episodes that we have seen till now, it's all very TOS. And I think a lot of fans has that feeling, oh my god, we're going back and it's old Trek again. And after Picard and Discovery, we're being back at the right path, and I must say this is the best Star Trek Kurtzman has made, and they're doing it very different, and I must say I really like it. So once again we are starting with a personal log of a crew member, and this time it is La'an. And we seeing that the Enterprise crew is remembering one of the first space travelers, like I thought it was the USS. What was it? Okay, never mind. But they remember, and they all have that very special pin. And La'an didn't want to wear it because all of the memories. And I must say that speech of Pike was very good. And they are writing, I think they are writing Deep Space Nine. I mean, Strange New World very good. Especially Pike's speeches. So, and even his pep talks are good. So, that's really nice. So, because also Uhura don't know what she really wants, she has been assigned to different departments within the Enterprise so she can orientate what she really likes. And this time it is engineering, and she is with Hammer. What is quite funny, because how Hammer talks to her, it's like, I always compare that with Oh, the one in Discovery. Yeah, it's almost like with Spock and Burnham. And you see in the end when Uhura wanted to keep him awake, he started opening up. And that was very nice to see. And then you could see that Uhura had been impressed. I'm also impressed with Uhura, of her not giving up, her determination to do things, and because he was blind and he had a broken hand, he couldn't work on the A350, and so he had to guide her, and he didn't like that because he was always independent. And, well, they had to become a team to pull this off. And Hammond didn't like that at all. But I guess at the end of this episode, you could see Hammer opening up to her and actually accepting her for what she done and how she does it. So, they are at this planet, and they follow a single, and they thought it was, they would send out communication, but it was already 2 or 3 days that they couldn't get through it. So they thought maybe there's something wrong, or maybe they got jammed. Who knows? So Una and Laan were getting with a landing party down to the planet, and they see that the whole surrounding is a massacre that had found place, and they didn't know who it was. And then there was a unidentified vessel on screen at the Enterprise, and Pike said, well, I'm going to beam you up, because we don't know. They were also being hailed by a cargo vessel, and that cargo vessel needed help. And so the professor, who was one of the leaders, she told Laan what's happening and what the signs are, and Laan got a really dark feeling of, I know this. And then she said there was a little girl who described that it was the Gorn. And Laan, who was the only survivor of the planet where she lived, she recognized it and told the bridge that they had to scan for Polaron EM singles. And because that's how the Gorn can be detected. So they detect a slight optical distortion near the planet, the second moon, and they found out that it was a hologram. And Laan yells, raise the shields, run alert! And Pike follows with the same command. But Ortega told him, we can't. The shields are still down because of the transportation. So the Gorn was attacking them, and the Enterprise, because they couldn't raise the shields, they were sitting ducks. And when Laan was looking outside, she recognized the Gorn ship. And I must say, they especially always said, is Gorn ugly? Well, the ship of the Gorons are ugly. And they destroy the cargo ship. So there are many wounded on all the Enterprise, and Una was very wounded, and La'an was apologizing. It's chaos everywhere. And La'an told Una, well, I'm sorry this, and I blacked out, I don't know what's happening, etc., etc. And Una ordered her to go to the bridge because the bridge needed her, because Una couldn't be in function of first officer, so she needed to take it over. And you know, and one thing, it's a little bit strange that La'an is a first officer in the way of what did she do to become acting first officer, but also like have that, just to be a first officer. I'd rather say let Spock be a first officer. So that's weird. It's really weird, but okay. So La'an went to the bridge, and she had a little discussion with Pike, and then she told him, well, it's the Gorn, I remember it, and etc. And she said, well, the first thing we need to do is hide, regroup, and then we can fight. So my suggestion is go into the brown dwarf, and we can go from there. So then there was a scene with Hammer and Uhura in the main cargo bay. They were working on the A350, but Hammer is wounded, and they concluded that Hammer had broken hands and etc. And so Uhura wanted to bring him to the sick bay. And then she stopped in track, and Hammer looked at her and he said, well, let me guess, the entrance has been blocked. And she was looking very surprised. I said, yeah, how'd you know that? Yeah, this and that. She could feel it, etc. So it's in that way very nice to see that Hammer has an other side than only being sarcastic and being who he is. So the next scene is that they are holding a talk about the situation, and I mean like Pike, M'Benga, Hammer, Ortega was there, and La'an, and the future prospects were very grim. But Pike came up and said, well, be creative, you are the best crew, and we will manage. So we're going to see how that works out. Bad thing is that systems are failing all over Enterprise, and it is very peculiar because also the sick bay is under attack and doesn't have any power, and all the systems there are offline, so they have to do everything like old school. And like I said before, I do think M'Benga has to have more weight on his him being there, because once again in this whole situation he doesn't take the lead, and I think Nurse Chapel in this occasion she has more leadership than he does. And I can remember that when Una was stumbling, getting into the sick bay, and she needed to be operated, and they had to do it old school, and Mbenga was not coming at the point, and Nurse Chapel was like, okay, I'm going to be direct, it's necessary now. And once again, I feel that Mbenga was very weak, and I do think that if they really want to have a good and strong head doctor, they need to make Mbenga stronger in leadership. And because if you compare Bones and him, Bones has more leadership than Mbenga. And Mbenga, I don't know, I really don't see him as head of medical, because he doesn't have that leadership all over the sick bay, and you see all the doctors around, and the only fierce person that is taking lead and have no nonsense at the right time is Nurse Chapel. And that is, I think, one of the reasons that I really like Nurse Chapel. And it's lovely to see that they give her more time and give her more expansions to the role that she's playing, because we know in TOS Nurse Chapel is very quiet and timid, and this young Nurse Chapel has really spunk, and she's really a busy bee, and I really like that about her. So Mbenga asked Chapel if she is good at sewing, and which means Chapel is going to learn something else now. And they all have to do it like old school, because all systems are offline. And so Una has to be sedated, and that was very futuristic mask. She got the gas like that, and somebody else needed a plasma thingy like blood, and she said, well, give it to the other one, I will survive in a way. But Mbenga said, well, why? Because you're going to bleed in a minute a lot, so, and that is something that is still mysterious about Una. Una gave the order that that other person gonna have that plasma from her, and the question is, how is she so sure that she would survive, or is there other things that would concur? And now we're talking about like the arguments, because Una is an Illyrian. So does that mean she has more surviving skills and surviving abilities than normal humans? Well, we don't know. Maybe she has. So La'an talks with Pike about what her experiences with the Gorn. And behind Pike, she sees a young man. And she has seen this young man through whole the episode. And later in the episode, we will find out that it was her brother. Her brother was the one who helped her escape from that colony. And it's very nice to see that. And once again, it's like the brother and sister relationship of Spock and Burnham. But it's nice to see that once La'an had this family feeling and was innocent. Now she is direct and to the point, and even with no feelings. It's like after she survived the Gorn, that she cut off all her feelings. So then we are again with Hammer and Uhura in the engineering, and Hammer can't work on the A350 because his hands are broken. So Uhura said, well, then guide me what I need to do. I will be your hands. And Hammer didn't like it all to become a team, and that is an example for people who are disabled but still want to do the best and function normally. And of course, because Hammer couldn't see, it was very difficult for him to ask for help. And the nice thing of this whole scene in the engineering, and also later in the engineering, is that Hammer and Uhura are learning from each other. Uhura is learning how she have to do it Hammer's way. So like feel the heat, etc. And so that's the first mistake she made. And that was that she put her hands on that thingy and she burned her hand. And so Hammer's answer was, well, I said you have to feel it, not to touch it. So that was nice as well. So Pike came on the bridge again, and Spock went to him and he said, well, you said us to be bold and creative, maybe I have a plan. So Spock is going to make the radar into a compass, and there are some tense moments when they were engaged in the Gorn. And the Enterprise was directly above them. And Pike realized that the Gorn can't see them. So it's more like a submarine type thing. So Pike said, okay, let's arm the photon torpedo. Spock said, well, Captain, we can't do that because this and that, they will see us. Pike said, no, we're not going to shoot it, we're going to drop it, like the bombs from in World War II, you know, like, I thought they were called, didn't they called like sub-bombs? That they are like trigger bombs, like you drop them in the ocean and they will explode. If there is a submarine near, they will see the submarine on the radar. I think it was something like that. And there was something too, is that Pike was calling Ortega by her first name. Question is, why would he do that? She's the first and only one that he will do that. And I don't know, but yeah, it's weird. Maybe, and that's the weird thing. When Pike is relaxed or semi-relaxed, he will call her by her first name. If he is tense and has a job to do, he calls her by her surname. So Pike gave Ortega the command to drop the torpedo. And I love how Ortega says, bombs away. It reminds me really of what they would say in the Navy. And like the old World War II movies. I just saw, by the way, Memphis Belle for, well, in a long time, and it reminds me really a lot about that. So one day, Torpedo, the Gorn ship, Spock confirms that the Gorn ship has been destroyed, and there were a lot of people who were glad with that. But there was a big problem. From nowhere, will be two small Gorn ships and one big ship to arrive at their location. So Pike figured out that the Gorn wanted them to fire because they have their location now. So the Gorn offer a whole ship up just to get their location. It's time for the Enterprise to flee and to regain themselves, and etc. So Spock tells Pike, well, if we are going to get into the brown dwarf, they can locate us, etc. And Pike was more or less excited about that because, yes, that's what we're going to do. Let's get into the brown dwarf. And Spock answered really, I say funny, like human way. But well, that was not my intention to do, but I told you just the opposite of it. So Pike's ordered to Ortega that she has to be close to the brown dwarf, so it makes look like that the brown dwarf will explode the Enterprise. So the conversation what follows was very funny, and I will give you a small expression of it. And that was, well, Pike said, Enterprise need to dive. Helm, take us out. And Ortega answered, aye aye skipper, dive, dive, dive. And once again, that reminds me a lot of the Navy. A lot of how they would fight in the Second World War. So Una is been operated by Mbenga with the help of Nurse Chapel. And Mbenga is closing her up, but they still need to have a big one. And that will be a problem because they really need to have the blood for Una because she's going to bleed heavily at this one. And, well, when they are doing that, Nurse Chip will hold this light thingy, like a torch. And it reminds me just of a mobile phone. You know, it's that big and the form is just like a mobile phone. Then they hear the metal squeaking and it's like of the Enterprise is mourning of the pressure they have because they are near the brown dwarf and also like the black hole, and it's very close that it will tear the Enterprise apart. And so we're back in the engineering, and Hammer is guiding Uhura how she has to do things. And also they hear those weird noises. And Pike had to make a hard decision because he needed to seal the bulkhead, and by this he had to sacrifice some crew members. I think that's not easy. So Cal and his friend were walking to one of the exits, and the exits were closing because Pike had to shut that down. And Cal's friend was pushing him through the hole of the accession so he could survive. And Cal's friend, Cal, is seeing his friend dying in front of his eyes. And with the knowledge that crew members would be dying, Pike went into battle mode. So he was gearing up to not playing no more Mr. Nice Guys anymore, but just go for it. Battle mode. So he led the whole ship going into battle mode, and that Gorn ship was following them into the Brown Dwarf. But they couldn't handle the tension of the Black Dwarf, and they implode. So they didn't survive. Meanwhile, Una has to be getting sedated because Mbenga had to get that last fragment out. And Mbenga, like I said before, was not getting to the point. And so Nurse Chapel was becoming boldly, and she said, straight to the point, what's gonna happen? And you see, because they were zooming in on Una's hands, and if I have seen this correctly, what is very cool by the way, Una had the Starfleet insignias on her nails, like in the uniform. And that's really cool because I know Trekkies who also doing that when they are going to the conventions. Oh, by the way, talking about conventions, I just heard yesterday that the Star Trek destination in London is cancelled. What is really disappointed, because I think a lot of Trekkies have been looking forward to that, and it's really, how can I say that, it's disappointing, but also like this is one of the greatest Trek events here in Europe, and I know they will do one in Germany right now, and the pity is that it's weird why they don't gonna do that in England. It's weird. So the question is also why in Germany and not in England. And now most of those actors who were coming to Destination Star Trek are going to be there at the Film and Comic Con in London. And that is in the weekend of the 7th and the 8th, I believe. So next weekend, they will be there. Next weekend? Or this weekend? Let me see. Let me check. Or it was the 10th. No, it's next weekend. Next weekend, the 11th and the 12th. Like on 10th, 11th and 12th. But okay. Back to the episode. Now we are on the bridge again. And this is the first time we hear La'an and Spock talking more with feelings, relaxing, and plain English. And that's still because it is a very, I don't want to say dark episode, but it is like a serious episode. They still make little fun talk between the crew. So, Laan and Spock had an idea, and they gonna take a shuttle into the brown dwarf so they could get closer to the Gorn. And so Laan was a little surprised that Spock wanted to come with her. And Spock said, well, talking in plain English, you just need backup. So she accepted his help. And then there was an Easter egg. And the Easter egg was that they will take the Galileo shuttle. And the Galileo shuttle is that we known as in TOS. So that was and I think they using the same exterior of the Galileo shuttle as we know from TOS. But it was very, very, very modern. And Laan is getting more memories back in flashes. And she asked even our Spock, and that was my surprise to it. Laan was asking Spock for a mind meld. And that was something I never thought she would do. And Spock was telling her about this isn't a sure solution for your traumas, etc. And she said, well, I need to because maybe there is a solution to this all. The answer is in there. So they made mind meld, and Laan found out that the Gorn are communicating with light patterns, like what the Army and Navy will do with flashlights. And she came back again in her memory, and there was a lot of talk between Spock and her, and they both were vulnerable of their own thoughts and memories. So we found out then that the young man she has been seeing all the time now is that it was her brother. And I must say, that boy really looks like James McAvoy when he was young. But Laan has also like a counterback at Spock. She could feel and see his memories too. And that is what she come to know about Burnham. So Laan, when they pulled back, and I think Spock was feeling at that moment as, crap, this is the first time my mind meld didn't work as good as it normally does. So Laan said, I know the light pattern now, and I know how I can signal them now. So she had a plan. So she signaled to them, to one of the Gorn ship, and that other the Gorn ship was destroying that second Gorn ship. So 2 gone, 1 to go. Well, then we are back in the engineering again, and Hammer and Uhura getting the A350 online. What is good. But Hammer was falling in unconscious, and Uhura began to talk to him, and she asked about that why his species were that pacifist, etc., etc., etc. And that was the moment that Hammer was opening up to her. What was really nice to see, because he was always, how can I say this? He was so defended always, and always like not letting anybody in. So he told her that he actually wanted to become a botanist. And although he didn't want to fight for Starfleet, but he would defend the ideas of Starfleet. Then there was another failure occurred by the A350. And so they only had one solution to keep Enterprise imploding, and Hammond told her, well, we need to deploy everything here in the cargo bay into space, including ourselves. And they told and talked with Pike about it, and Pike had an idea. And he said, well, we're gonna play The Hunted, and then we play that, like ducks, etc. do. And so that means that Uhura and Hammer had to suit up. And it will be a struggle to survive. But I think this action quite make them in that way friends. And I think that because Hammer opened up and accepted Uhura's help, he become a more likable character, and I think we will see more of him. So the next nice comment of Ortega is, well, if this is working, Captain, they have to call this the Pike maneuver. What makes me chuckle, because we know the Picard maneuver, we know the Riker maneuver, we know other plans of maneuvers, and this is the first time they really have been talking about Pike's maneuver. So Pike opens up a ship-wide channel, and he gave one more pep talk, but once again was a very good one. And miraculously, the whole sick bay is coming online. The Enterprise was getting into the black hole. It destroyed the Gorn. They let the A350 out, so it was looking like that. It would look like that the Enterprise was destroyed. So the Gorn was convinced with that, and they went away. The Enterprise is flying out of the black hole, and they survived this whole ordeal. What makes it cool, but also Pike, Starfleet. The first thing Pike did was contacting the cargo bay. And there was a long, tense moment because they couldn't get any answer back. And finally Uhura got on, and Pike and the whole bridge crew was relieved that they were still alive. And I think also that this makes it to be part of the big Enterprise crew. There are extraordinary people, and I do have the feeling that the writers are going to write more about the background of the characters so we fans can know them. And I think this is the first time in all the series that came after TOS and TNG, they made the right decision to write it like this. And they made the right decision to write about the backgrounds from the characters right away. Because I remember they didn't do that in all of the Star Trek series. This is the first series that they're doing that actually. And I think you can have more feelings for this series than that you will have for other series. And I don't say that other series are crap or are too good. I'm just saying the writing is very different. And in one way, and I didn't check this or don't know this, but it's like if the TNG and TOS writers are helping the writers who are writing Strange New World. So we're coming back in the sick bay, and Una wakes up, and she is getting blood by transfusion, and that is really weird because they don't use that. So that means also that the sick bay is up and running again, but not that up and running that everything is in place and in order right now. Then we are closing up with La'an's personal log. And we see for the first time that La'an is wearing that remembrance pin. What I do like, I hope in one way that they will distribute this also for the cosplayers and the fans. So in this whole episode, 7 people died. But there was 7 crew and I believe 3 civilians, making the count to 10. I really liked this episode, and it was very interesting how, and in one way, it is a pity that we didn't see the Gorn, because I'm very curious to see how they make the Gorn now. And I say that because at the moment I am making TOS tunes for Onsto and do that tutorial, etc. And it is nice to see and nice to compare those Gorn of the TOS and Stowe and the Gorn from Strange New World, how they look like they did with the Klingons and Discovery and etc. Although I do think, and I think of that now, I think the Klingons in the Star Trek history, the Klingons has the most makeovers of all species in Star Trek. What do you guys think about that? I'd like to hear what you think about that. So let me know in the YouTube channel or on the Facebook group. And let's talk about it. So the one thing I still need to do is rate this episode. And my rating would be a 8.5, 9. Because I really liked this episode. And it's really been good written. So, yeah, let me know what you guys think about it. Dear listeners, thank you for listening, and join me next week for a new extra episode of Arenda Talks in the Star Trek series. You can listen and subscribe to Arenda Talks on the YouTube channel or join the Facebook group. If you'd like to comment or talk with me about this episode, you can reach out on the Facebook group and the YouTube channel. I also like to tell you about my other podcast called Girls Talking Trek. Together with my co-host Amanda, we recap every 2 weeks a Star Trek episode, starting with Star Trek The Next Generation. All the episodes will be recapped in chronically following. We will approach each episode with humor and a feminine look. Girls Talking Trek is to listen, follow and subscribe on Anchor, Google Podcast, Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcast, the Facebook group and the YouTube channel. See you next week.